Well, thank you everyone for attending this webinar today. I'm Brian Stroney. I'm one of the founders of Insite Software, and we're very glad to have you with us today. The title of today's event is Digital Transformation, exploring how and why e-commerce fundamentally changes companies. Over the past 10 years, Insite has worked with many leading product and distribution firms, and one thing is clear to me. Their world is rapidly changing. Leaders are being disrupted by more agile and innovative players who are just easier to do business with. So joining us for the conversation today will be some of these leaders from Ameripride, Emco, American Paper and Twine. These companies are quickly becoming the disruptors in their respective markets, and they're leveraging e-commerce to expand their footprint. Andy Hoar, an analyst from Forrester, will also lead the conversation, and he'll share his thoughts on the opportunity that exists for wholesale distribution companies. A special thank you to Dirk and his team at Unleash WD for helping to organize this event. So with that, Dirk, I'm going to let you kick things off.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so very much. And it is just a great opportunity to work with you and the great team of people up at Minneapolis at Insight. So thank you so much for this. And Brian, I think you and your team picked a phenomenal, very timely, pertinent, and relevant topic of this whole topic of digital transformation, because as you said, we are in fact living in the age of disruption. If you look around, right, our world, there are fundamental shifts that are taking place from the global geopolitical shifts that are taking place and are going to impact our business one way or the other. Governmental influences, the competitive environment, demographic shifts, and of course, the topic of today, technology. There's an organization out of New York by the name of Inferential Focus, and they look at all the shifts and all the disruptions that are taking place around the world and quite frankly in our markets and in our businesses. And they talk and write about the big shift, how it's playing out, and how there's this fundamental restructuring of the economy that's taking place. Deloitte each year publishes their shift index, where they write about the disruptions and the shifts that are taking place in terms of the underlying market changes, the talent, the war on talent, the competitive landscape, and of course technology developments. Steve Denning continues to write in Forbes magazine about leadership in the three-speed economy, where we are now living for the first time in three economies. We're managing our businesses in three separate economies. The traditional economy that we all grew up in growing our businesses, the financial economy, like what happens over in Wall Street and the like, and then this third economy, the creative economy, where the digital transformation allows companies like WhatsApp to be sold for $19 billion. So Brian, again, I think it's beautiful that you guys have put this together because we are living in the age of disruption. So our topic today, as you said, digital transformation, exploring how and why e-commerce fundamentally changes companies, should be on the forefront of every C-suite, every CIO, CEO, COO, line manager of the organizations. So what are we going to do today? What can we expect in terms of the conversation that we're going to have? What we hope to do is to have a conversation and accomplish three things. We'd love to give you all insight into the challenges and opportunities that are associated with this digital transformation that's going on. Second, we want to help you all understand how and why new technologies can accelerate the adoption of your connections with your customers and also your connections with the internal relationships that you have within your organizations and why that's so important. And third, we want to help you to really take from this 60 minutes real best practices regarding how to implement a B2B e-commerce strategy. And that's why I'm so excited that we have our three panelist members, as well as who we're going to start off with by introducing to you Andy Hoar, who's the principal analyst at Forrester. And he's responsible for serving the e-business and channel strategy professionals. You see on the screen that he's focused on the B2B and B2B2C e-commerce. He knows the digital transformation and e-commerce inside and out. And we're really, it's really a great opportunity, Andy, to have you here to share with us your knowledge relative to this digital transformation. So, Andy, thank you so much for being here, bud.
Hey, Dirk, thanks for that great introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And for those of you who know me, you'll know this is one of my favorite topics. So I'm looking forward to sharing a few thoughts here at the beginning, and then that should lead into a conversation we're going to have with some folks in the industry who are living the world that I've been talking about for the last several years. So next slide.
And Andy, just before you jump into everything that you're going to share with us, did I hear that you have just recently taught yourself? I know this has nothing to do with digital transformation, but did you just learn how to teach yourself how to juggle?
I did, actually.
You don't juggle fire, do you?
No, no fire, no swords, no fire, just balls. No, it was just something I always wanted to do, and I was teasing my wife about, I could learn how to do that. And she said, well, see you can. So I did. But
I love it.
Got to always challenge yourself with new things.
No doubt. Well done, man. It will help you out during all the Q&A during the webinars that you do, juggling everything.
That's right. What do you think I'm doing when I'm answering questions?
You betcha, man. Well, thanks for being here, Andy.
So, just next slide.
Yeah.
As Dirk said, this is really about transformation. And again, it's one of my favorite topics because I find, with rare exception, unfortunately, most companies are not prepared for this. It's one thing to talk about it. My dad used to say, when I'd say, I want to eat a whole plate of pasta, he'd say, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And I think to some extent, we see a similar situation today. Companies really need to get their brains around and their minds around what is transpiring before them. These are not minor changes that you're going to have to implement. I think we'll hear from some of our speakers too that, this can be done in a gradual way, but just because it can be done in a gradual way doesn't mean it's any less revolutionary in what's taking place here. So next slide. The challenge, I think, is most companies tend to see what's happening with digital transformation, and particularly e-commerce, as sort of that drop in the water. They're like, well, it's a new channel. I remember I heard this years ago that e-commerce is just a new channel. It's just like catalog. It's just like stores. In the case of B2B, it's just like, talking to a sales rep or calling a customer call center. It's just another channel. And, I think to perceive it as just another channel is to underestimate the impact it is really having on organizations. And more importantly, is to underestimate what changes you have to make to accommodate, in particular, the speed with which companies need to move today. So I think the more appropriate way to look at this is not as a drop in the water, but rather the impact here is more like an asteroid hitting your planet Earth here. The point here is that these are very significant, fundamental changes that have to be made. Now, the interesting part about, when that asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula several millennia ago and wiped out the dinosaurs, it wasn't so great for the dinosaurs. So there's a destructive influence that takes place, but that's the case with everything. The good news is it gave rise to humanity. So even if you're destroying sort of one version of your business in some ways, it's giving rise to another. And destroy is a strong word, it's a harsh word, but you hear companies talk about this all the time when they say, we're worried about e-commerce cannibalizing our business. Well, to some extent, e-commerce will be cannibalizing your business, but if you don't do it, somebody else is going to cannibalize your business. So you might as well cannibalize your own business. And by the way, that's an either-or sort of comparison. The more accurate representation is really that it's a multi-channel business, and that this is going to infuse your entire organization and make you a digital-driven, digital-first company that will use multiple kind of traditional and non-traditional channels to reach customers.
Hey, Andy, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You said a digital-first company. In your mind, that's the way business is going, and this digital transformation is mandating that we become a digital-first company?
It is, because your customers are digital first. That's what this is all predicated on. You know, you hear what's really changed actually is that companies, B2B companies, and individuals in those companies, who by the way act a lot like consumers in the way they research and buy products and services, are in fact following through on that, and they're forcing B2B companies to change how they approach, you know, content, change how they approach shopping. In the case of B2B, change how they approach transactions. Everything is changing. So you're simply following your customers. And if your customers are digital first, and increasingly most of them are, that's where they start. There are plenty of studies that have been published out there that say that well over 60% of the purchase decision is made before, and this is in a B2B setting, before B2B customers actually ever contact your company. So if 60% of the decision is already made, you need to be where they're starting these decisions and processing these decisions, and that is largely off of and out of your physical off-channel, offline channel environment. It's really online. It's at search engines. It's at third-party sites. It's at your own website. It's at a manufacturer's website. So this is what I mean by digital first. It's where are people starting their research, where they're making their decisions, and increasingly, I think substantially, those decisions are being made in a digital realm.
You betcha. Thank you, Andy.
Next slide.
Yeah.
So, you know, just want to share a few thoughts here about where I see the impact taking place. And just to illustrate the point that, you know, digital impact is going to be felt across your organization. And starting with, for example, marketing. And that's something no less important than and as fundamental as customer acquisition and retention. You know, I think of a company like Grainger, for example. One of my favorite stories that Grainger has told is that in 2010, they owned less than 10,000 keywords. They owned and managed and controlled less than 10,000 keywords. By 2013, the number had risen to 5.7 million. That kind of growth, that kind of thinking is fundamental and structural change. It was the realization that, you know, their companies and their customers are starting their research online. And so, you know, if you're not there, they're not considering you. And you need to buy those keywords to show up in either, you know, organic search results or paid search results, but that's where the battle is being fought. I think also Nike has done a very good job of understanding, you know, that the internet fundamentally changes how they interact with their customers. If you look at Nike's B2B portal, which is b2b.net, looks a lot like their B2C portal, which is nike.com. That's a company that, like Grainger, I think understands that this digital thing is transformational. Next slide.
Yeah, amazing.
Sales. I think this is one that tends to hit companies sooner in the process rather than later, and tends to cause problems sooner rather than later, and actually forces companies to make hard decisions sooner rather than later. And this comes in the form of purchase channel shift. And in particular, what this is somebody going from talking to a person on the phone or meeting somebody in person to making those decisions and buying for themselves via self-serve portal online. Every industry is different. Companies have faced this in a different way. There are lots of little interesting ways to kind of deal with this, but this is the one that causes a lot of consternation for companies up front, because as their customers who are digital first, who are starting their research online and are increasingly, you know, say buying online because they're already starting the research online, so it's a natural progression, you start to see salespeople and organizations recognize the shift, and it becomes an existential threat in some ways to their livelihood. And so obviously they don't let something like that go by without comment, so they tell people, and then pretty soon, and I've heard this story half a dozen times, the CEO of the company is literally in a room with the guy who had sales and the guy who had e-commerce and says, hey, we need to all get along here. And the sales guy says, look, this guy's stealing my livelihood. And so there are, you know, lots of ways to grapple with this, none of which can be solved in 30 minutes. But
Yeah.
there are companies like, the B2C space like Nordstrom that dealt with this early on. Pitney Bowes in the B2B space has dealt with this. And companies like Grainger, too. I mean, they're very open about how they've done this and how they see the role of the salesperson not being eliminated, but changing and becoming digitally enabled as well. Next slide. Customer service. I think what we've seen by the Amazons of the world is they've raised the bar. I mean, there are much higher expectations now. This is a big one that a lot of B2B companies struggle with. The companies I've been working with for the last 2 years, this is one that is sneaks up on them, because when somebody can research and buy online, that means your company is open 24/7, 365, which means your customer service needs to be available 24/7, 365. And as you can see from the picture here, a lot of call centers are people, and they work a finite number of hours. You struggle if you're an organization where at 3 o'clock in the morning, your largest customer may just happen to be up, looking at your website, sees something that he or she likes, has a question, isn't willing to wait until 9 a.m. the next morning for an answer because maybe a competitor has somebody available for a chat in real time. So you need to think differently about how you support your customers. This is the good and the bad. 365, 24 hours a day means you can interact with and sell to your customers in that kind of environment, but it also means you can interact and sell with your customers in that kind of environment. I think in the B2B space, I would point to companies like Dell and Hoar as good examples. I really like what Dell's done. If you look at Dell's website, they give you a multitude of different ways to reach them, from email to chat to phone call. And they make it very easy and clear for you. They are a company that faced this early on. They grappled with this, and they moved beyond it. And I think they're a model for other companies to look at. Not in every other way, but in this way, for customer service, they've really set a pretty high bar. Supplier relationships. I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but as you can imagine, it goes back to the channel conflict issue where sales reps it's an internal channel conflict. Supplier relationships in a digital transformation can be an external conflict. All of a sudden, for example, if you're a distributor, you might be competing with your own suppliers. Brand manufacturers who may, and we've seen this, are increasingly selling direct to customers as well. Now, this is a very complicated issue. When you talk about channels, and this could be 3 webinars on its own, but this is a reality. And as distributors in particular, you need to prepare not just for competition from other distributors, but increasingly from your own suppliers. I think companies like 3M and Caterpillar are companies that I would point to as models of companies that have at least grappled with this. I don't think anybody's really solved it, and it's not a problem you solve once and move on. It'll take years and several iterations to get it right, and it may actually change in that time period as well. Next slide.
Yeah.
So from another.
Go ahead. It's frozen up. All
right. Well, I was going to talk about operations, and in particular distribution and logistics. And I think there aren't a lot of great examples in the B2C space of this. The B2B space, but there are some really good examples, one in particular in the B2C space, a little company called Amazon. So a couple of years ago, Amazon figured out that they're not going to be able to play the game on price differential because they were the ones who were able to sell basically tax-free in the vast majority of the U.S. states. But states wise up to it, they realize that if you create nexus in a state, besides customer experience, which I don't want to minimize, that's important. But in addition to customer experience, what else can they compete on? And one of the things that you can see in terms of their investment is clearly they believe logistics and infrastructure and the ability to deliver things quickly. We all saw the story about the drones, I mean, that's an outgrowth of this. It is Amazon realizing that if they can't, be substantially less expensive because of the nexus issue on taxes, they better do something to add value beyond just having a great customer experience. They're going to have to deliver things more quickly. And so, they're forward deploying distribution centers near urban areas. They're exploring the idea of delivering things next day, even potentially same day. There are a lot of questions around the economics of those models, but it doesn't change the fact that Amazon sees this as at least a second order opportunity to differentiate. And I think B2B companies are going to be struggling with this one as well. What happens when somebody orders something and next day becomes the norm, whereas opposed to now, it could very well be exceptional. I think that's the kind of struggles that B2B companies are going to face. Fortunately, there are a lot of B2B companies that have pretty sophisticated infrastructure. So they have a natural kind of a logistics orientation, but it doesn't change the fact that this is an area that digital is disrupting as well. And then next slide, last two areas I want to cover. One is technology and then one is organizational models. What I mean by technology here is, it was a stat that came out a couple of years ago in the B2C space saying that Amazon was spending on average 6% of its total revenue on research and development, whereas the average retailer was spending just 2%. So you can imagine, how do you compete when a company is spending 3 times the amount? Well, what we've seen in the B2B space, we had a survey that we did last year that we looked into this, and it's anywhere from 4 to 7% of online revenue is what the average B2B company is spending on technology infrastructure just to support an e-commerce operation. I think you have to ask yourself, are you spending that level of money? Are you doing 4 to 6% of your total online revenue on just technology infrastructure to support e-commerce? If not, you need to be investing at that level because Amazon, like I said, is at 6%. There are B2C companies moving into various spaces that are increasing their investment, and B2B competitors are wholesale investing in technology. We had a survey we did last year and asked what percentage of B2B companies were going to either upgrade or replace their e-commerce platform in the next 18 months. And the number came in at 49% in the next 18 months. To contrast that with B2C, it was 12% in B2C. So, B2B companies have awakened to this notion that, especially distributors, if you want to be competitive, you're going to have to become a technology company because that's the value that you're adding. You're going to be using technology going forward to differentiate your value proposition. And then the last point is around organizational models. And this one is arguably the hardest one. This is the one I see companies struggle with the most. All those other things we mentioned, marketing, sales, customer service, et cetera, these are things that are happening to organizations, from an external perspective. But to react to all these things, you have to have the right people and the right processes in place. And that's not the kind of thing you can just go buy. You can't just go buy, like you can buy a technology platform. You can negotiate agreements. People and expertise are the most important thing, the hardest thing to develop, and the thing that has the lowest margin for error. And so, this is the area that we're doing a lot more consulting at Forrester around, which was a little bit of a surprise to us. But companies coming to us saying, hey, we get it. We know we have to make radical changes. We just don't have the right people. We don't even know where to start to go find those people. And it's a highly competitive marketplace to begin with. And, we are located not in one of the sexy cities, New York or San Francisco. And so, we're struggling to get people of that caliber to, come work with us, in the middle of, Iowa or Ohio or Nebraska, where very good companies are located. But in the battle for talent, this is the one that's really tough. And hopefully hear from some of our panelists about how they've grappled with this one as well. So on that note, Dirk, I'm going to hand it back to you, and let's start the conversation.
Absolutely. Andy, thank you so much, man. What a great way to start out this conversation about how digital transformation is and e-commerce is really fundamentally changing our businesses. I love what you said right there towards the end, that if we are going to want to be competitive, you've got to become a digital company. And becoming a digital company doesn't mean just throwing a website up there, right, Andy? It's going to impact your business in at least these 7 areas that you walked us through. And we're going to need to think long and hard and act fast at the same time if we're going to remain competitive. So, Andy, great way to start it off, bud. Thank you. And I know you're going to stick around to participate for the rest. So thank you, buddy. What I'd love to do now is to introduce everybody to our 3 panelists. We are just super thrilled that we've got 3 individuals who have lived and breathed digital transformation and e-commerce for several years. And they have gone through the process to begin and further than beginning the implementation process. So we're going to hear from Andrew Steiner, who is the VP of Marketing and Customer Operations for Ameripride. Andrew, thank you so much for being here, buddy.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, look forward to it. We also have Karen Schaefer, who is the VP of Information Technology, Customer Service, and Marketing. Karen, you wear a lot of hats up there at American Paper and Twine. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And we also have got Barbara Schiffner, who is the Senior Director of Technology Services, the CIO, if you will, up there at EMCO Corporation up in Canada. Barbara, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So, guys, let's get this conversation started, building upon, what Andy just shared with us. One of the companies that I have learned and read about and studied just a little bit is Tully, who is this global provider. You drive down the road and you see these things on top of cars. They provide these accessories, including roof racks, sport carriers, and other recreational vehicles. And this is an organization that decided to jump into the digital transformation game. They decided to be competitive, as Andy said. They decided that to become a digital-first company. As a result of them making those decisions, you see on the screen what happened to their order volume. It increased in the United States by 200%. Average order value in Canada increased by 500%. Oh, my goodness, phenomenal numbers. Decreased customer service calls volume by 7%. All dramatic impacts to the bottom line of this organization. Now, we can talk about technology, which we're going to with you all, and we can talk about these metrics, which are phenomenal. But, guys, as I look at this one case study, for example, I think of one word, and that word is decision. In order for any of those results, order volume in the United States increased by 200%. In order for that to have happened, a leader or a team of leaders had to make a decision. Despite all the cloud and the fog of this digital disruption, they had to look at it, study it, strategize it, and then make a decision to move forward. So my first question to each of you, and whoever would like to go first, just jump on in, But Andrew, Barbara, and Karen, I'd love to understand at first the why behind each of your companies. Why the decision to commit to an e-commerce strategy? Andrew, can we start with you, bud?
Sure, absolutely. Andy hit it well early on. Our primary reason is really about the customer. The customer, we saw, was rapidly changing how they were interacting with us or how they wanted to interact with us. Technology is really, as individuals, become a key part of their lives. And if you think about some of our typical customers, they're small and medium business-sized business owners, and they're on the go. A restaurant might already be using OpenTable or Yelp or Facebook from a technology perspective, and we saw they wanted to deal with us that way. It wasn't enough to have our customer service rep who's driving a truck and delivering product to them every week face-to-face with them once a week. They wanted to interact with us digitally as well. There are 2 other reasons for us, and the second is really technology enables some interactions that aren't really possible or scalable with people, so we can help our customers control their purchasing through technology or configure products through technology that human interaction just isn't that good at. And then the third big reason for us is, of course, about growth. I mean, if customers are moving this direction, we want to grow. If you're not growing, you're dying, and we see this as a big differentiator for us.
Cool, Andrew, that's awesome. Thank you. So you really took a look at your market and your customers, saw that they were changing, their habits were changing, and technology is a big part of their life, and it really drove some of that decision, as I'm hearing you, right? And then it allows you to scale and grow the business. Awesome stuff. Thank you. How about you, Karen? Any thoughts there, Karen?
Yeah, it wasn't so much that we sat down and had a conversation and made a choice. I think we came into the room knowing we had no choice. I mean, we had to invest this way. We had to change our e-commerce. We were just getting tremendous pressure from the outside, whether it be our outside sales reps or our customers. They would go home and they would shop and they would have a great experience with, Amazon or LL Bean or whatever they were doing, Nike, and they were starting to expect a B to B2C experience in a B2B environment. And prior to our investment, I think we always thought, well, for B2B, the site can be different. It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles and all the great things that B2C has. And that gap closed real fast on us. And so I felt like it wasn't a matter of, do we have a choice here? It was, where are we going to get the money and how soon can we start? And I think that's where we went.
Yeah, Karen, that's awesome. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, that slide that Andy showed of the meteor hitting the Earth, huh? If you recall that, right? And there was a fundamental requirement, if I'm hearing you right, from the outside, as you said it, and you said that we had to change because of that change, and I see that meteorite hitting the Earth as I listen to you, so thank you.
Yeah, well,
Barbara, how about yourself? Why? Why the decision for you all to make this commitment? And it really is a commitment to e-commerce and digital transformation.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I would say it's a combination of what Andrew and Karen just had to say. Our customers really expected us to have an e-commerce site and a mobile site, because our customers have a great range. We have the small mom and pop plumbing shops, and we have very, very large customers. So we had to come into this with the idea that we needed to fill all of their expectations. And we still see our business as a relationship business too. So it's an extension of our brick and mortar locations, and we're okay if it's transitioning sales from, and not necessarily incremental sales too. So it was really an expectation that we needed to have this. We currently do have an e-commerce site, but it's a little clunky and it's hard to use. And as Karen mentioned, we really thought that we needed to have something that was a B2B site, but was more of a B2C experience. So we spent a lot of time and effort getting ready for that.
Well, and I know you'll share some of that effort with us here in just a bit. And I love what you said, Barbara, about the customer expected and this change. And you still, even though we're entering this realm of digital, you still see yourself as a relationship business, which brings me to the next point I'd love to ask you. Barbara, you might start us off with this, because you just talked about you still see yourself as this relationship business. In the digital world, right, how do you see this relationship and this connected commerce that e-commerce allows for impacting your business, if you don't mind?
Well, we spent a lot of time getting ready for a B2B site, in that we assembled a team of 9 to 12 people that for 2.5 years worked on getting rich product content. And what we did is we did an analysis and found that we had roughly 110 suppliers that we get our products from. That is the biggest volume of our sales. And we went and collected full product catalogs from each one of those suppliers, so that we see that we're, again, an extension of the business where we're helping our customers understand product, what it does. We collected images and specification sheets and instruction manuals to really connect and help build on that relationship. So it was a huge endeavor and a lot of money and commitment from the company to provide all of that kind of data. But we feel that that is really going to connect and be a real huge benefit to our customers.
Sure, I appreciate that. And 110 suppliers, their full catalogs, and maybe we'll drill down a little bit more than that in a bit. But I also hear you saying the word content, right? Part of that relationship and that connectedness is being able to provide that content that your customer requires, going back to what Andy said, 24/7, 365, if I'm hearing you right. So thank you.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. Karen or Andrew, how about Karen? Any thoughts relative to the connected commerce thought process, tying into why you guys jumped into this, feeling that you had no choice?
Well, we felt like we're selling across the board to a lot of different generations, whether it be the baby boomers or the Gen Xers or now the millennials, and we just felt like we had to have all these different ways to touch a customer. And we wanted a high-touch approach. We still wanted feet on the street. I said that backwards. Yeah. But we still wanted to give other people who maybe don't want a person coming to their office to take their order a way to touch us and a way for us to touch them through email marketing and things like that. So for us, it became about being able to make sure we could stay connected with all types of customers. So that's where our thought process went.
Karen, how cool is that? By 2020, they tell us that there are going to be 5 generations in the workforce, right? As you said, the baby boomers, the millennials, and everything in between. And those 5 different generations have different sets of needs and expectations. And what I hear you saying is this digital transformation is allowing you to connect to each one of those generations. Very cool insight. Thank you. Andrew, how about yourself? And then we'll get to each of our individual stories, please.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist on this, and I think the connection points, or one of the connection points for us, is really about our service channel. As I mentioned earlier, we're out there providing weekly deliveries and pickups for each of our customers. This is really important for us, those guys on the trucks who are really the face of Ameripride today and provide the vast majority of interactions with our customers, to be connected with what is going on with the e-commerce part of our business as well. It's not going to be effective for them, to be making a delivery and to be caught sort of flat-footed with the customer when the customer has a question about something they did online. So we need to make sure through their handheld devices that they're using and through eventually tablets for all of our customer service managers, that they've all got access to the same information in terms of transactions or interactions between the company and the customer, because otherwise, our service will break down if we're not connected between all those different channels that the customer is accessing. So the connections really for us, or one of those connections, is really about connecting the people within our business to better service the customer.
Andrew, that is so cool. There's a very good book out by a gentleman by the name of Michael Hinshaw that is titled Smart Customers, Dumb Companies. And he uses the example of, you get online and somebody, and the digital equipment asks you for your credit card number, right? And then you get to customer service rep, and what's the first thing they ask you for, the live person? Your credit card, right?
Absolutely.
And so what I hear you saying is, to make that connection, you've got to make sure that all of this information flows seamlessly, so that when we have that interaction with the customer, we seem like a smart company rather than, as Michael Hinshaw calls it, a dumb company. So very cool. Thank you, bud. So Andrew, Karen, and Barbara, great insight as to why and how we connect through commerce. I know each of you have put a lot of work into really the implementation process. And one of the things we want to share are some thoughts and best practices. So I know each of you have a few moments that you'd like to share with us, a story relative to your implementation of e-commerce and digital transformation. So let's just go down the line here and ask each of you to kind of share that story. And if we have some questions, we might interrupt and the like. So Andrew, I'll turn it over to you. And can you just give us a few moments relative to the journey that Ameripride has taken in this digital transformation in e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the story I want to tell is about a customer, big customer for us, that a couple of years ago we made a transition with, and if we hadn't had the technology in place, frankly, we would have lost the customer. And so it's really kind of a story about transitioning that customer from one value proposition that we offer to another. So you saw there a second ago the delivery truck. Our traditional business is really around adding service to textiles. So we take a napkin or a uniform and provide delivery service and rental service. So we're financing the purchase of that, and importantly, laundry service. So there was a shot there a second ago, someone happy person in one of our plants doing the laundry. So we have this customer, ONG, and ONG, Oklahoma Natural Gas, spread out over several states with many, many sites. And the traditional value prop we offered, that delivery and laundry service, was not as valuable to them anymore. They were looking for an image for their people, that really the laundry didn't make as much sense for them as did a high availability of product, and critically for them, the ability to control the brand. So they recognized a change in their preferences, talked to us about it, and what we were able to do with them with the technology is put a new microsite together for them using our Insite platform, is how we're hosting that now. So you can see the cover page there, or not the cover page, the home page. And what we've got is a number of these company-specific sites now that really the new value proposition for them is the convenience of purchasing online. It's the control of their branding. So they've got more than 700 individual users placing purchases with purchasing control around that, so that ONG knows how much they're going to spend. They can budget every year how much they're going to spend. If their users want to spend more, they can use a credit card, personal credit card, to buy something on their own. But they control the brand, they control the look and feel, they control the products offered, and critically, the spend management. And so, a few years ago, without technology, there's no way we could have done this, and we would have lost this customer. We're actually much happier as a result, too. They had a lot of small delivery stops, not very profitable for us, and this is great for them. It's also great for us. So, for us, technology enables us to bring more value to the customer, and it's sort of a caution for folks, listening on the phone. If you're anticipating, making this change to using technology, don't chase the lowest price. Make sure you're figuring out how to use technology to bring more value to your customers, not just shift the purchasing channel. So that's a little bit about.
Yeah, cool. I thank you, Andrew. I really love it. How it's more than a website, if you will. What I hear, you use the digital capabilities. You use, in this case, the Insite e-commerce platform to really transition your value proposition to this individual customer. And you ended up, suggesting, I love this quote that I heard from you. You said, in your mind, this digital transformation in e-commerce, it's all about adding value. Unless you just want to play the game price, which I don't think anybody on the phone does, you're going to have to find a meaningful way for technology to add value for the customer. Can I put words in your mouth and say that it's not about the technology at Ameripride? It's about adding value and finding the right value proposition for your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. If we did a lot of research going into this with customers, spent a lot of money, a lot of time in that area, so we could really nail down what are we trying to do with the technology to bring value to the customer. Otherwise, frankly, we're competing. We're selling apparel online. People have been selling apparel online for probably 15, 20 years now. We'd just be playing the price game otherwise.
Yeah. Andrew, great story, and I appreciate the insight. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Karen, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good?
I was thinking about this implementation thing and going back and because we've already implemented, about how we approached it. And I think we kind of took a three-prong approach. We broke it out into somewhat of three different teams. We had kind of our marketing team who would look to the implementation and to establish the look and feel, what worked well visually, how to promote our value online, that value proposition. How do we really sell that? How do we sell our story of who we are, what we sell, and why you want to do business with us. Then the most important part to us was the functional part, and we kind of built a team of champions from different areas of the business to talk about what were the needs of the customer. How was the customer touching us? What were they calling us for? What could we provide for them digitally instead? And so, like, we had someone from our credit department, and he said, well, they want copies of invoices, and they want these things. And our customer service, well, they have questions about this product. They need content, you know. So we clearly defined where we had gaps and opportunities to touch them in a better way through our site. We made a very clear list of what their needs and expectations were. And then the third thing we worked on simultaneously, and it is still ongoing, and it is a major, major commitment and investment, is content. It is a moving target. It never stops. And we really had to just eventually bite the bullet and hire people who take ownership of, you know, premium content, that rich content that everyone is looking for.
Boy, interesting, Karen. You know, three things. You know, assembling this team of marketing, how it looks, the functional part, really defining the steps of the customer journey, if I may, right? And then getting that content. You had to hire that new talent. I think back to what Andy told us about, you know, the organizational model, and that really being the toughest part, right? Making sure that we got the right people on board to be able to help us move this digital transformation forward. And it sounds like you guys put a lot of thought into that team and the people who were right, who saw the vision and had the capabilities to help you move forward. Am I interpreting that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of planning on the front end, because we had done this twice before, actually. This is our third platform, and we weren't quite as organized the first two times, and I think in some regards we would miss the mark in what the customer was really looking for. We didn't do ourselves any favors necessarily until this third time.
And if you don't mind, and maybe you answered it already, Karen, what did you do different this third time that's driving the success versus the first two that you said failed? Was it the fact that you put this team together?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first two times we made assumptions about what our customers wanted, and the people designing the site, who are not always, you know, the technical people are not always the best people to read into what the customer really needs and wants. That comes better from the customer, or it comes better from your customer service team or your sales team, the people who actually are interacting with them. So I think we shifted a little bit in that regard, and I think that's why we did a better time the third time.
Cool.
It only
I
took us
appreciate
3 times.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. But hey, you kept at it. You kept at it, and I think it's awesome. We can learn from that, right? And then just real quick, I know we're running up on time, but just can you share with us some of the results by moving to this digital transformation? How has it impacted your business and the bottom and top line? I know it's impacted the head count, how you service customers, and your ability to proactively support sales. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. We've been very fortunate. This has really kicked off a big growth spurt for us. We've been able to grow several $1 million in sales, and whereas we used to say, well, if we grow in sales this amount of money, you know, this $1 million or this $2 million, we have to add a customer service rep to handle the call. So we've really been able to avoid that. In fact, our headcount in customer service has gone down. We're not, you know, we're still a family-owned business, so we're not really in the practice of letting people go. But as through natural attrition occurred, we just didn't rehire, so we shrunk. And then our call volume to customer service went down. It depends on the facility, because we operate 6 facilities, somewhere between 15 and 20% per distribution center. So we took that as an opportunity to convert people from to revenue producers. So we took 2 full-time staff and converted them to what we now call our inside sales development team. and they are just cold calling and making appointments and feeding those calls and those appointments to the sales team, and they're getting really far. It's been very successful. So while we decreased the headcount in customer service for just incoming calls, we're able to increase our outbound sales, appointment setting and that type of thing.
Sure, sure.
Also,
Karen, thank you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the other thing that's been really helpful for is our buyers, who were getting inundated with calls nonstop from sales reps and customer service wanting just basic product information, and now all that information is online, so their call volumes really dropped and they can focus on buying better.
I love it, and enhancing those internal relationships, Karen.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. I was flipping back to that cover slide with your bio on it, with the picture, mentioning that your company's been around since 1926, and I'm thinking about, the lessons you learned from these 3 e-commerce efforts that you've made, where you've landed right now, and what you've been able to drive. And it's obvious you've got a culture of innovation and transformative leadership that's been around since 1926. And kudos to you, and thank you so much for allowing us to learn from you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, our third panelist that we heard from a little bit earlier, and we'd love to hear more from, is Barbara with EMCO. And Barbara, I know that you guys have been going down this journey. You've invested quite a bit. You're driving some results. We'd love to hear from you relative to this digital transformation and journey that you've gone on, and pull out some of the lessons from you as well, if you don't mind.
Well, last year, a team of us went out to, we traveled across Canada to all of the provinces within Canada to meet with our managers and our sales teams and customers. And I would say the one word that really stuck and resonates with me is listen. We listened to what the pain points were, what they wanted, and what kind of solutions and technology solutions would be best fitted for them. Then we formed a team to go to Minneapolis to kind of talk about the requirements and what we wanted in an e-commerce site. And we did that last year, and then built a prototype, so to speak. So this year we traveled across each province in Canada to show that prototype, and all the while the product team that I spoke about earlier was continuing to finish up and to build that rich product content for our top suppliers. But what happened when we went out to each one of the provinces this year, when we showed the new e-commerce site or the possibilities there, was that it showcased all of the product content that had been gathered, and the light bulb kind of went off for a lot of our managers and sales teams in how else can we use that rich product content. So again, it's not just a website, but it's about building tools that fit every kind of facet of our customers. So I read a term years ago, and it's stuck with me, so I use it a lot. It's called customer stickiness. So we want to build tools that are great for our customers, so it's easy to do business with us, and they never want to leave us. And so I just come back to it's truly about listening and hearing what the pain points are, so that you can build the best value for your customers and have it so it's valuable to your internal teammates as well.
Boy, that's awesome, Barbara, and I love it. Building the value both for your customers and your internal teammates. When you went out and you went across Canada, different provinces, and you talked to your employees, I'm really intrigued, and you listened to what they wanted. Can you just give us, a snapshot of insight into, what it is what those conversations looked like, the types of questions you were asking them, and then I'm also interested, did they know what they wanted, or did you have to read between the lines?
It was all of that. The first go around when we went out to each one of the regions, it was initially started as us doing a presentation, and what we found quickly after the first session was that we needed to do more of a roundtable, more of a brainstorming, collecting information, what do your customers expect? You know, again, like Karen mentioned, we have every generation. This is the first time in history that there's been so many generations of people in the workforce. So it differed, and in our industry, it also differs by market segment. So you have, you know, commercial and residential, industrial, waterworks, many different kinds of customers. So it was really about just opening it up, starting with a couple of probing questions, and then just listening and taking a lot of notes. And then coming back to the office and having whiteboarding sessions about what worked and what won't work, and how can we fit the needs of all of our customers. And it's really not about one solution. It's about fitting the need for them at that point in time.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. And then one last question. I know we are up on time, so I apologize, but I want to ask this question. It's cool because then you went and listened to your team. You whiteboarded that. And then the second step you said is that you formalized the team and you went up to Minneapolis, I believe, to meet with the team at Insite in this case, to really work through the requirements. What value did you find in working with an outside organization, right? Somebody who doesn't know your business as well as you, but knows e-commerce, to help you define those requirements?
Well, it was a great workshop. It was 2.5 days, and it was a great workshop because they already had sort of a template of how to organize a 2.5-day workshop session and this team that went up to Minneapolis was from across the company. So there was sales, there was our locations and managers from our locations. There was people from our support center, which is what we call our corporate office, just there to talk about how and why, and it was also about even questioning some of our business processes and whether or not we wanted to continue doing some of our workflow and business processes too. So it was a lot of insight brought out. So
cool. Well done, Barbara. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. So Andrew, Karen, and Barbara, really appreciate your insights, the stories, the best practices. Really help us think this through. And of course, Andy, would love to appreciate you being on as well. So Andy, you kicked this thing off with how digital transformation is really impacting our businesses. We got to be digital first. We heard 3 case studies as to what these 3 organizations are doing. But Andy, I'd really be interested in your thoughts, having sat through and listened here. Any thoughts on where and how those people who are listening right now should start down this digital transformation and e-commerce journey?
I really like what Andrew, Karen, and Barbara said. There was a theme that was consistent across all of their stories, which is that they all did their homework. They went out and listened to their customers. I mean, it's such a hackneyed phrase, but you'd be shocked how many companies don't do this for a variety of reasons. But all 3 of them said, look, we embarked upon a journey where we challenged our sacred cows, we thought differently about who our customers were, and we envisioned the world not just in the present, but also going forward. And we asked our customers and our clients and our employees, hey, where do we need to go with this? Not necessarily just where we are today. And that's exactly the right way to do it. And you should do that actually not, just episodically. You should do that on an ongoing basis. And the beauty of the internet is that it enables you to do those kinds of things. I mean, you can do customer focus groups, customer surveys, there's all sorts of ways to get that information, and you'd be remiss if you didn't. But kudos to Karen, Barbara, and Andrew for doing that. That's the approach you need to take. Don't start from an inside-out perspective. Start from an outside-in. The only thing I would sort of say in conclusion here is that, the world has changed, and you need to think along different timelines. I think it was possible before to have 3 to 5 year plans and to execute on those 3 to 5 year plans and do so successfully with minor adjustments. I don't think that's the case anymore. When you consider that the iPad just turned 4 and the iPhone is, 7, we're not, 3-year cycles are tectonic plate shifts. And so what you need to do, though, is you need to have a vision on a 3 to 5 year time frame, but you need to execute on 18-month time frames, and you need to constantly be rethinking what value are we adding. And if you go to your customers and ask them and stay close to them and get outside information and really spend the time thinking about where to skate to as opposed to where you should be right now, you're going to be successful.
Andy, thank you so very much, man. What a great way to wrap this up. And as you mentioned that the world has changed, I think of the quote from the fiction writer William Gibson, who reminds us that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? Digital transformation is here. Organizations are implementing, learning it. Some are ahead, some are behind. It's just not evenly distributed. So great insights from all four of you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Insite for sponsoring this. Insite is a phenomenal organization out of Minneapolis that provides all of us great tools and insight to help us enable greater connections with our customers and internal relationships. They help us deliver superior customer experience. They help us leverage the power of total integration, and maybe most importantly, they really specialize in driving superior results. So Insite, thank you for this. And one last thing, there's an opportunity or a reason for all of you to come to Chicago in October. Forrester, Andy's organization, is having their forum for e-business and channel strategy professionals on October 28th and 29th. You can find all the information online or from your friends at Insite. Then you can stay over on October 29th and 30th. Our organization is having our third annual Unleash WD Innovation Summit that's really designed to transform the distribution industry one business at a time. So Insite, thank you very, very much. We appreciate you all joining us. Let's go out there and let's begin and let's pick up the pace of the digital transformation within our own businesses. For now, have a great day, everybody.